You're listening to Unmuted Love. Hi there, I'm C. Ushelman, and with 35 years as a marriage and family therapist and 25 years as a parent of 2 children I brought home from the foster care system, I want to welcome you here to Unmuted Love Podcast, the one place where nothing is off limits to say out loud about parenting children from difficult beginnings.
Stop for a minute, stop and breathe for a minute, long it over your head, try to listen instead, won't you? Think for a minute, who you want to be for a minute, don't get over your head, you're like everyone else, aren't you?
Sometimes it's real sweet around here, and sometimes it ain't so pretty, because this is 100% Unmuted Love. So let's go.
You'll be just
Hi parents, welcome back. I'm so happy to have you here. Let's start by, our traditional, let's take a deep breath. All right, so it's in through your nose for 4 counts. Hold it at the top for 4 counts. And blow it out your mouth for 4 counts. Now that you know how to do it, let's do it one more time. Deep breath in for 4 counts. Hold it for 4 counts. And now blow it out for 4 counts. Oh, I actually really look forward to doing that with you all. It's kind of funny because you're not like right in front of me or anything, but I think of you out there and I know you are. And I know it's just refreshing to have a place where you can come and breathe and know that other people are listening too. You are so important. Raising children from difficult beginnings is so incredibly hard, and having a place where you can come and be seen and heard and understood really matters, and I know it's a blessing for you. So thank you for all the well wishes. There are so many people who are listening to this podcast. I am so surprised. I don't know. I thought when I started it, maybe 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, but no, there's a whole lot of people. So I'm super excited to think that I have something that can help you feel like you're not alone in this world and that someone's here who has lived through it and who has actually done a pretty darn good job of thriving. And it wasn't easy, and it's not easy for you, and I'm not suggesting that it is. And I'm not suggesting that if you found some good therapeutic parenting, that suddenly your life would be transformed into some kind of magic world, because that's not realistic. But what is realistic is taking care of yourself, learning how important that is, and learning some therapeutic parenting strategies to go with it. And together, those 2 things create a thriving life. You'll still be tired. Your kids will still melt down occasionally. You will feel like you are drowning with your hair on fire once in a while, but it won't be every day and it won't be all day long. So let's get started today and talk a little bit about some therapeutic parenting principles. I actually want to talk a little bit about presence, about the strategy of personal presence, and that's your superpower as a parent. And it's actually one of the best correction strategies there is. So if you're looking to find a way to support your child who may have gotten into a negative feedback loop of sort of talking back or being what we might call defiant, what we're really looking at probably is your child's inability to accept your leadership in this moment for whatever the reasons are. So we know that children from difficult beginnings often have difficulty surrendering their own personal power to that of a parent if they've experienced any kind of trauma in the early years and or attachment trauma, anything, like trauma is trauma. And so if your child has any kind of trauma, they may be acting it out in the form of a kind of communication to you. So what is it telling you? I'm not sure, except that they'd like to have their own personal power, please. And they don't always say it that nicely. But you do have personal power if you're regulated. So I want to encourage you to find your steady, stable, regulated self and think in terms of being empowered yourself to embody the authority that you have as a parent. That's the secret sauce. That's your superpower. You have that everywhere you go when you regulate. So we've talked a lot about how to regulate, and sometimes it's just a couple of deep breaths, right? And we did that at the start today, and I'm going to keep doing it to remind you that deep breaths taken in a particular way, actually will regulate you. You don't have to listen to what the kids say. Breathing doesn't help, Mom. Well, breathing really does help if you do it the right way, and parents can do it the right way. So I want to encourage you to always stop, drop your agenda, and take a deep breath to regulate yourself before you do anything. Because what that does is it returns you to a state of embodied calm, of embodied authority. And from that place, then I want you to address your child. So, for example, if you have a child that often is in a negative feedback loop of saying, no, I'm not going to do what you want, or just pretending like they're deaf and they don't hear you, then what you could say to your child is something like, well, I see you're having trouble doing this thing, like maybe turning off your computer. I see you're having trouble turning off your computer like I asked, and I don't know what's going on, but something is, because ordinarily you would turn it off. But I'm going to either help you or you're going to turn it off for yourself. Which would you like? And so this is a way of embodying authority. The way we sometimes act is sort of like, put it away, do what I told you. Okay, well, whatever. All right. And then walk away because we're frustrated and we don't stand there embodying our authority. So children can feel our fear, the fear that your child is going to get mad or scream or yell or throw a fit or get, big in your face. And, if you're afraid of your child, then you're not going to be embodying your authority. You're going to be disembodied, right? You're going to be in your fear state, which is your fight, flight, or freeze brain. When you're in that brain, then you don't embody your authority, you embody your fear. And so what I'm encouraging you to do is learn how to step into your own embodiment of calm, your steady, calm, regulated self. Because from that place, you have the authority to request things from your child and follow through if they don't follow through without fear, right? Because you're regulated and you're not afraid of them. So this is a really important strategy. It's one of the most important because your embodied presence says so many things to a child. Like if you are able to stay embodied with your child and present, then what you're saying is, you're not bad. I'm not afraid of you. I love you even when you're mad at me. It's going to be okay. I've got you. So your embodied presence says all of that when you're not even saying anything, right? So it's a pretty powerful notion. So along with this embodied presence, then you want to use things like setting boundaries. So when you're embodied, you can set boundaries without being punitive and without being scary. Like you don't have to pull up your hairy eyeball at a child to scare them, because when you're embodied, your authority comes out loud and clear. So what messages are you sending to your child? This is a really important question because your body language, your regulation, your facial expressions, and how you treat every incident matters because they're paying attention. And like all children, they're interpreting it as about them. So if you're scared of your child, they can interpret it in two different ways. Like, oh, I'm scary, and my mom's scared of me, so something's wrong with me. Or, oh, I'm more powerful than my mom, and that makes my mom scary because she doesn't have this. Does that make sense? I want to tell you a little story about Alex and his mom, Sarah. I have been working with them for a very long time, but Sarah's had a very hard time regulating herself in the presence of Alex. He started getting kind of big and blustery and in her face early on when he was little, and she had a hard time managing him even when he was little, but then he grew taller, and so he's 12 now, and he's much taller. He's much taller than his mom. One evening I got a text from Sarah saying, Alex just said the meanest things to me. He yelled in my face. He got up in my face. What am I supposed to do? And I texted her back and I said, first, take some deep breaths and sit down on the couch. And she texted back, what's that going to do? And I said, did you take the breath? She said, no, not yet. And I'm like, take them now. Take some deep breaths. And I reminded her of the in for 4, hold it for 4, out for 4. And so she took some deep breaths, and then she texted me back and she said, okay. And I'm like, are you sitting on the couch? And she's like, no. I'm like, okay, take a couple more deep breaths and then sit on the couch. And she took a couple more breaths and sat on the couch, and she texted me back, okay, I did it. And I'm like, okay, so where's Alex? And she texts back, he's just standing here in the room. And I'm like, oh, great. So I text her back, great. Well, just say, hey, buddy, how are you doing? Are you okay? Seemed like you got really angry there for a second. I'm just wondering if you feel like you want to talk about it. And so she tried that. And then she texted me back and she said, I can't believe that worked. I can't believe that worked. Thanks. Good night. So, it was over in just, I mean, I don't know. I think the interaction couldn't have been longer than 5 minutes before I got the text that said, it's all fine now. And then when I talked to her the next day, she said, yeah, he just went on his way. It's just that she was inclined to either yell back at him or leave him alone, in which case he would get bigger if she yelled. And if she left him alone, he was going to follow her and chase her, and that always scared her. And so, what I encouraged her to do was embody her authority and not be threatening at the same time. So, that's what all that breathing was about. And you could hear from the text that she wasn't doing what I asked her to do. She couldn't make herself become regulated. And so, I just persisted with that long enough until she actually did it. And then I also asked her to sit down in the room so she could demonstrate calm and not continue to be somewhat scary to her child. So even though he's significantly bigger than her, I encouraged her to embody her authority, but also to sit down without being threatening. And in doing that, she became safer for him. And she was regulated, so she was less scared. And once all that had happened, then it was easier for them to just move through this little bit of difficulty they were having, because it wasn't over something big. It was actually over something quite small. But the energy of it had gotten so big that she was frightened and it frightened him. And so when she regulated and got a little bit smaller in the room while keeping her authority, she demonstrated to him that she was going to be safe, and then he could calm down too. And that's the magic of embodying your steady, calm, regulated self. Another example that's coming to mind is a parent whose child was 10 years old, and he had taken to calling her the worst names ever. I mean, really pretty vile names. And it so threatened her and it so hurt her feelings. And she was so shut down by it that she became disembodied, right? And kind of crumpled over into it in a kind of collapse state regularly whenever he would start in with that kind of language toward her. And, he senses that he has power in that moment because she goes into a collapsed state. So we worked on it quite a bit. And what I helped her do was stand in her own presence, right? Be embodied in her presence, take some breaths, get regulated, and then say something like, wow, those are big words you're saying. You must be feeling pretty bad to say words like that to me. And then just listen. Now, he still said really mean things right back at her, but I encouraged her to just stick with it. Whenever those big, ugly words came out toward her, I encouraged her to embody her authority without being scary and just address it back to him. Wow, those are big words again. Those are big, mad words. I'm wondering if we can talk about it, and then let it go. And he may come back with the bad words again, or he may not. Well, what happened is over time, and it was quite a while, it was a good month, where she persisted in embodying this calm, regulated self and continued to ask the question, first of all, to just describe, wow, those are big words you're saying. You must feel really bad about something, and I'd like to know what that is when you're ready to talk about it. And what that does is it allows the child to see that you still love them even when they're at their ugliest. And that's what we want to be telling kids, is that, hey, you have some of these big, disturbing feelings. They come out in behavior that's kind of ugly that nobody likes, and I don't like the sound of it. I don't like you to break things, and I don't like you to hit me. I don't like you to run away. I don't like any of that. But it's happening. I still love you. And I'm still going to be embodied right here, caring about you when you're at your worst. That's the most beautiful love language there is, right? Of just loving somebody when they're the ugliest. I think in terms of even my own husband, like I have had some ugly moments around parenting, especially, but even I've had some ugly moments around, just being a partner. And I had the imprint of my family system, which is pretty mouthy and pretty angry. And he didn't come from that, but he loves me. So he would literally just lean in. Whenever I'd get upset, he would lean in. And that would disarm me, first of all. It would just completely disarm me. I'm like, oh, why aren't you yelling at me back? Why aren't you engaging this? Because I'm so mad. I want you to engage, but he didn't. But instead, what he would do is lean forward and he would come toward me with a hug of all things. And I didn't want a hug. I was like, no, you can't hug me. And he'd be like, yes, I can, because I love you. And just that message to me, this is the early years of our relationship, but that message to me just really helped melt that traumatized child heart that I had from my early difficult beginnings. And his repeated ability to stay present, not personalize what I was saying, and still love me by leaning in a regulated way healed me. I mean, I literally stopped that behavior because it didn't work, right? First of all, it didn't work to get whatever it was I was looking for, which I think was a fight, because that's what I was used to in my family, was fighting. That's how we demonstrated love for one another. And so when he wouldn't do that, but he wanted to show me love in a secure way, first of all, I was resisting. I resisted it, like, no, I don't want that. And kids will resist it too. They'll push you away if you ask for a hug sometimes. But that's okay. Just say, that's all right. I'm here for a hug when you want one. So just being very steady and calm and clear that your job is to lean in, to not be abused, to embody your authority, and to maintain your love. I mean, whether you're an adult to another adult or whether you're an adult to a child, the goal is for the child to learn how to do that with us, right? And so we need to demonstrate it with them as well. Now, as I'm relaying that story about my husband, I'm thinking about my daughter. And she can really blast my hair back with her words. She's very articulate, just like her mom. And when she gets mad, she just runs a mile a minute and she blows hot air at whoever's standing in her way. And so being an embodied presence for my daughter took some practice on my part. And so one of the things that I had to practice doing was not making a big eye contact with her, which is kind of counter to what we often say is make soft eye contact and all of that. But that would be actually a little bit too much for her and for me. So what I would do is embody my presence, but look a little bit askance, like I'm here, I'm listening, and I'm nodding, I'm listening to what you're saying. I have a posture of leaning in and caring, but my eyes are tilted down a little bit, not like in shame, but just not making piercing eye contact. And that alone sometimes is enough, right, to diffuse the situation and to allow a little bit of regulation in. Because sometimes that direct eye contact, even if you think you have soft eyes, if your child is in a fear state or in an anger state, which I think is a fear state, then they're going to perceive whatever expression on your face is there as some kind of threat, because they're not in a state where they're able to engage their social engagement system, right? Which means that you're safe and they can come toward you in a good way. I have parents all the time say to me that therapeutic parenting is just kind of too mamby-pamby, too easy on kids. Kids will never learn. And what I want to address with you is a simple situation, which is that kids do learn, and they learn when their lids are on, right? When they're regulated, and they learn from a regulated parent. And they don't need punishment and they don't need fear to learn. As a matter of fact, if you give them punishments and you give them scary eyeball, scary hairy eyeball, then they likely won't learn as quickly as they would if you had a calm state and a calm presence, because their cortisol is too high because they're too frightened by you. So it's really important to realize that the inner subjective communication between brains is super important. And I'll get into that another time because we're already almost out of time. And I don't want to get into the neuropsychobiology of the brain right now, but trust me when I say that when brains are communicating either quietly or out loud, then there are neurochemicals being expressed in each person's brain. And that registers in the brain as either fear or love, right? I'm safe or I'm not safe. And those two things are in the limbic system. I'm afraid, I'm unsafe, or I'm safe and I'm loved, right? So it's fear or love, fear or love. And our brains are constantly making that kind of assessment. And it doesn't matter if you're a parent or a child or a stranger on the street, our brains are making that assessment all the time. And if there's trauma in either person's history, in the child's history, in your own history, then sometimes we think there's a threat when there isn't. And so it takes a lot of energy to learn how to be present with somebody who's having a big emotion. And so I'm not suggesting that you be able to do this necessarily very easily if you didn't come from a secure childhood. As a matter of fact, if you come from an insecure childhood where there might have been traumatic experiences, then you are actually going to have trouble doing this very simple thing of being present, of embodying your presence. And that's okay. That doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It means you need to practice so that your brain and your body can become used to kind of the up and down arousal necessary to regulate. So that's a practice. It's like meditation. It's like yoga. It's something you do every single day. And little by little, your mind and your body become very adept at it. You know, if I tried to do yoga right now, I mean, it would be the end of the world for my body. I could not do half the things. But I have done yoga before. And after I'd done it for 6 months, I was pretty good at doing yoga. So, you know, it's like this stuff doesn't come any more easily than a workout or yoga or meditation or anything, right? That takes some effort. It takes practice and repetition and practice. And sometimes you succeed and sometimes you fail. And it doesn't really matter. Just get back up and start again. Try not to fall into the category of listening to what your child says. Oh, breathing doesn't work. Regulation doesn't work. Because I promise you, the neuroscience is in on that. We know that regulation impacts the regulation of the person who's near you. So our regulation definitely impacts our child's regulation. And vice versa, our child's regulation impacts us. And so unless we want to be screaming memes like our little kids, then we really, really, really have to practice some new methodologies for managing our own stress, managing our own fight or flight, managing our own fear or love. So I want to send you away with that support to try a week of regulating yourself and embodying your calm authority when setting boundaries with your child, or when having to say no to them, or when having to say something to them that you know isn't their preferred thing. That's okay. Stay embodied, stay regulated, and practice whatever comes your way. Practice accepting whatever comes your way. It can be a big upset in your child, or it might just be they hand over the computer and it might shock you, because your regulated state may indicate to your child that it's safe to turn over their computer and that they're really happy to comply sometimes, right? They want to be in your good graces. And when they know better, they do better. When we know better, we do better. So remember, your love matters, and I will see you next week here on Unmuted Love. Hey parents, this is C. Get the help you need to end destructive and chaotic behavior in your home while parenting children from difficult beginnings. I know you need help, and the Love Plus parenting model actually works. I'm inviting you to work with me personally for 6 months in my virtual therapeutic parent program, and I guarantee you results, or 100% of your investment back. How is that for a blue ribbon deal? I'm looking forward to working with you. See you on the inside.
Stop for a minute. Stop and breathe for a minute. Don't get over your head. Try to listen instead, won't you? Think for a minute. Who you want to be for a minute. Don't get over your head. You're like everyone else, aren't you? You could gain from being a bit nicer. Knowing to talk and when to shut your mouth.
The Unmuted Love podcast is hosted by me, C. Eshelman, attachment and trauma specialist at the Attach Place in Sacramento, California. Our podcast producer is the amazing Saya Clark, and our theme song is Nicer by Houses on the Hill, licensed through Epidemic Sound. Thank you for being such loyal listeners here on Unmuted Love. I'll see you all next week.
You'll be just fine. You could gain from being a Try